The smell of fresh paint filled the small workshop on Maple Street. Sheila Hunter stood before an old wooden chair, her brush moving with careful, practiced strokes. The morning sun came through the tall windows, making the wet paint shine like honey. Sheila was 67 years old, but her hands were steady and strong. Her silver hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore an old blue apron covered with paint stains of many colors. Each stain told a story of a piece she had restored, a customer she had helped, a memory she had created in this quiet place. "Morning, Sheila," called a voice from the door. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Tom. You're early today." Tom Wilson owned the bakery across the street. He was a big man with a round, friendly face and flour always on his shirt. He carried a paper bag that smelled wonderful. "Brought you some fresh muffins," he said, walking into the workshop. "Blueberry, just how you like them." "You spoil me," Sheila said, putting down her brush. She walked to the small table near the window where she kept a kettle and cups. "Tea?" "Always," Tom said, sitting on a stool. He looked around the workshop with pleasure. "You've been busy. How many pieces are you working on now?" Sheila counted in her head. 5. This chair for Mrs. Patterson, a desk for the library, 2 dressers for a young couple moving into town, and a bookshelf for Dr. Morrison. "You never run out of work," Tom said with admiration. "People appreciate good craftsmanship," Sheila replied, pouring hot water into 2 cups. "And old furniture has soul. It just needs someone to see it." They sat together, drinking tea and eating muffins. Through the window, they could see Northvale waking up. The town was small. Only about 2,000 people lived there. It sat in a green valley, surrounded by gentle hills. There was one main street with shops, a church, a school, a library, and a small hospital. Everyone knew everyone. Life was simple and safe. "How long have you been here now?" Tom asked. 20 years? 25? 25 years this September, Sheila said quietly. "Hard to believe. Seems like you've always been part of this place." Sheila smiled, but something flickered in her eyes, something old and distant. "Sometimes it feels that way to me too." Tom finished his muffin and stood up. "Well, I'd better get back. Emily will wonder where I've gone." "See you at the town meeting tonight?" "I'll be there," Sheila promised. After Tom left, Sheila stood at the window for a moment. She watched the street fill with morning activity. Children walking to school, Mrs. Rodriguez opening her flower shop, old Mr. Bennett sweeping the sidewalk in front of his hardware store. This was her life now. Quiet, safe, predictable. But it hadn't always been this way. Northvale was the kind of town where nothing much happened. The biggest excitement was usually the annual Harvest Festival in October or the Christmas market in December. People liked it that way. The town had been founded in 1847 by farming families. Now, most people worked in the nearby city, about 30 miles away, or ran small businesses in town. There was a sense of community that was hard to find in bigger places. People helped each other. They knew each other's children and parents and grandparents. Sheila had arrived in Northvale 25 years ago, in September 1999. She had driven into town in an old car, carrying everything she owned in 2 suitcases and 3 boxes. She had rented a small apartment above what was now the flower shop. She had been 42 years old, thin and tired, with dark circles under her eyes and hands that sometimes shook. She had told no one where she came from. She had told no one what she had done before. When people asked, and they did ask, because small towns are curious, she would just smile and say, "I needed a fresh start." At first, people thought she was running from a bad marriage, or maybe financial problems. Some of the older ladies whispered that perhaps she had been sick and needed peace to recover. But Sheila never confirmed or denied anything. She was polite but private, friendly but careful. She had taken a job at the local antique shop, helping the owner, Martha Greenwood, clean and organize old furniture and items. Martha was a widow in her 60s who appreciated Sheila's quiet manner and strong work ethic. Sheila learned quickly. She had good hands and a good eye for detail. "You're a natural at this," Martha had said one day, watching Sheila carefully clean an old mirror frame. "I like working with my hands," Sheila had replied. "It's calming." Over the months, Sheila had started to restore pieces herself. She learned about different types of wood, about stains and paints, about how to fix broken joints and replace worn parts. She found peace in the work. Each piece she restored felt like a small victory, a small proof that broken things could be made whole again. When Martha retired 5 years after Sheila arrived, she had offered to sell the business to Sheila. But Sheila had different ideas. She opened her own workshop, focusing only on furniture restoration and painting. She didn't want to sell antiques or deal with customers constantly. She wanted to work quietly with her hands and her tools. The workshop became her sanctuary. It was a simple building, just one large room with tall windows, wooden floors, and shelves full of supplies. There was a small office area with a desk and filing cabinet. In the back was a storage room and a tiny bathroom. It smelled of wood and paint and old memories. Over the years, people had grown to trust and like Sheila. She was reliable. She did beautiful work. She charged fair prices. She always had time to chat, but never gossiped. She helped with town events. She donated restored furniture to families in need. She taught woodworking classes to teenagers every summer, but she never talked about her past. She never mentioned family or old friends. She never explained why she had come to Northvale or what she had left behind. Some people still wondered, but most had stopped asking. Sheila Hunter was just Sheila, the furniture lady, the quiet one, the kind neighbor who minded her own business but was always there when you needed her. Sheila lived by routine. Routine kept her grounded. Routine kept the memories away. Every morning she woke at 6 o'clock. She made coffee and ate toast with jam. She read the newspaper. She still preferred paper to screens. Then she walked to her workshop, which was only 3 blocks from her apartment. The walk was pleasant. She passed the park where mothers pushed strollers and old men played chess. She passed the bakery where Tom was always up early, filling the air with the smell of fresh bread. She passed the church with its white steeple and the library with its rows of neat windows. At the workshop, she unlocked the door and turned on the lights. She put on her apron and looked at the day's work. She always started with the most difficult or detailed task, while her mind was fresh. Around 10 o'clock, she took a short break. She made tea and sometimes walked across the street to chat with Tom or wandered down to Mrs. Rodriguez's flower shop to admire the blooms. She worked until 1 o'clock, then stopped for lunch. Usually, she brought a sandwich from home, or sometimes she walked to the small cafe on Main Street where Linda Peterson served good soup and better company. In the afternoon, she continued working until 5 or 6 o'clock. Then she cleaned her brushes, organized her supplies, and locked up. Evenings were harder. The quiet apartment felt too empty sometimes. She read a lot, mysteries and biographies mostly. She listened to classical music. She cooked simple meals. She went to bed early. On weekends, she allowed herself more freedom. She hiked in the hills around Northvale. She volunteered at the library, helping to organize books and run reading programs for children. She attended town meetings and social events, always friendly, always helpful, always just present enough to belong, but not so much that people tried to get too close. It was a good life, a quiet life, a safe life. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, she woke up sweating. In her dreams, she heard sounds, loud, terrible sounds that made her heart race. She saw faces, young faces, frightened and hurt. She felt the ground shake beneath her feet. On those nights, she got up and made tea. She sat by the window and watched the empty street until dawn came. She reminded herself that those days were over. That chapter of her life was closed. She was Sheila Hunter, furniture restorer of Northvale. Nothing more, nothing less. She had worked very hard to become nothing more and nothing less. Despite her private nature, Sheila had made friends in Northvale. They weren't deep friendships. She had built walls that were hard to climb, but they were real and warm. Tom and Emily Wilson were perhaps her closest friends. Tom owned the bakery, and Emily taught third grade at the elementary school. They had 2 grown children who had moved to the city, but visited often. Tom and Emily had been kind to Sheila from the beginning, never pushing for information she didn't want to give, always including her in gatherings, but never making her feel obligated to attend. "You're like family," Emily had said once, and Sheila had felt her throat tighten with emotion. Then there was Dr. James Morrison, the town's general physician. He was in his early 50s, a widower who had lost his wife to cancer 10 years ago. He and Sheila had a quiet understanding. They were both people who had lost something important and were trying to build new lives. They sometimes had dinner together, talking about books and music and the small happenings of the town. There was no romance. Neither of them wanted that. But there was companionship and mutual respect. Martha Greenwood, Sheila's old boss, was now 83 and lived in a retirement community near the edge of town. Sheila visited her every week, bringing her restored furniture magazines and fresh flowers from Mrs. Rodriguez's shop. Martha had taught her so much in those early years, had given her a purpose when she desperately needed one. There were others, too. Linda Peterson from the cafe, who always saved the corner table for Sheila and knew she liked her tea with just a little milk. Mr. Bennett from the hardware store, who gave her discounts on supplies and loved to talk about woodworking techniques. Young Sarah Chen, who worked at the library and was always eager to learn about furniture restoration. And there were the children. Sheila had taught summer workshops for local teenagers for the past 15 years. She showed them how to sand wood, how to apply stain, how to bring old things back to life. Many of her former students still stopped by to show her their projects or ask for advice. "You have a gift with young people," Emily had observed once. Sheila had smiled. "I just treat them with respect. Listen to them. Young people have good ideas if you give them space to share." What she didn't say was that teaching gave her a sense of redemption. Each teenager she helped, each skill she passed on, felt like a tiny piece of atonement for the young soldiers she hadn't been able to save. The town meeting that Tuesday evening was held in the community center, a large room with wooden floors and folding chairs. About 80 people attended, a good turnout for Northvale. Mayor Richard Foster stood at the front, a pleasant man in his 60s with gray hair and a patient smile. Next to him sat the town council members, Janet Liu, who ran the post office, Michael O'Brien, who taught at the high school, and Susan Grant, who owned the gas station on the edge of town. Sheila sat near the back, next to Tom and Emily. She listened as the mayor discussed various town matters, the need to repair the roof on the community center, plans for the upcoming Harvest Festival, a proposal to add more streetlights near the school. And finally, Mayor Foster said, consulting his notes, "We need to address the old chemical storage building on the north edge of town." A murmur went through the crowd. The building in question had been empty for more than 20 years. Before that, it had been used by a manufacturing company that made cleaning supplies. When the company went out of business in 1997, they had left the building full of old equipment and stored chemicals. The building had been locked up and mostly forgotten. "The county inspector came by last month," the mayor continued. "He says the building is deteriorating. There's concern about the chemicals inside. Some of them might be hazardous." What kind of chemicals? Someone called out. Industrial cleaning agents, solvents, that sort of thing, the mayor said. Most of them are probably fine, but some could be dangerous if they leaked or mixed together. The inspector recommends that we hire a specialized team to come in and remove everything safely. How much will that cost? Asked Mr. Bennett. About $50,000, the mayor said, and there was a collective gasp. 50,000, Janet Liu exclaimed. That's our entire reserve fund. I know, the mayor said wearily. But if we don't deal with it, the county will condemn the building and we'll have even bigger problems. Why is this our responsibility? Michael O'Brien asked. The company should pay for it. The company went bankrupt years ago, Susan Grant pointed out. There's no one to hold accountable. The discussion went on for nearly an hour. Some people argued that the town should just seal the building and forget about it. Others worried about environmental damage or safety risks. A few suggested trying to get grants or state funding, but that would take months or years. Sheila listened quietly. She felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the feeling she always got when she heard talk of dangerous chemicals or potential accidents. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that this was not her concern. She was not responsible anymore. She had left that life behind. We'll form a committee to research our options, the mayor finally said. For now, we'll make sure the building stays locked and post warning signs. If anyone has ideas or concerns, please contact the town office. The meeting ended around 9 o'clock. People gathered in small groups, talking and worrying. Sheila slipped out quietly and walked home under the streetlights. Back in her apartment, she made chamomile tea and tried to read, but her mind kept drifting to the chemical building. She thought about all the things that could go wrong. Leaks, fires, explosions. She shook her head. Not your problem, she whispered to herself. Not anymore. But sleep was difficult that night. 25 years ago, Sheila Hunter had been a very different person. She had been Captain Sheila Hunter, ammunition technical officer in the British Army. She had served for 18 years, rising through the ranks through hard work, intelligence, and an unusual talent for understanding how dangerous things worked. She had joined the Army at 24 after completing a degree in chemistry at university. She had been looking for purpose, for adventure, for a way to serve. The Army had offered all of that and more. Her specialty was explosives and hazardous materials. She learned how to identify different types of ammunition, how to safely handle and store them, how to dispose of old or damaged materials. She learned about chemical weapons, biological threats, and every type of danger that modern militaries might face. It was technical work, precise work. It required a calm mind and steady hands. It required the ability to focus completely, to shut out fear and emotion, to think clearly even when facing something that could kill you in an instant. Sheila had been good at it. Very good. She had served in several locations: Germany, Cyprus, Northern Ireland. She had trained countless soldiers in safety procedures. She had supervised the construction of ammunition storage facilities. She had disposed of unexploded ordnance from World War II and decommissioned old weapon systems. Her colleagues respected her. Her superiors valued her. She had been awarded commendations for her service. She had been on track for promotion to major. She had been proud of her work. She had believed she was making the world safer, one carefully handled explosive at a time. And then came August 17th, 1999. The Royal Army Base at Thornwood had been Sheila's assignment for 3 years. It was a large facility in southern England, home to several thousand soldiers, and used primarily for training. As the ammunition technical officer, Sheila was responsible for the base's ammunition storage areas, the training ranges where soldiers practiced with live weapons, and all procedures related to explosives and hazardous materials. She had implemented strict safety protocols, regular inspections, detailed record keeping, mandatory training for anyone who worked with ammunition. In 3 years, there had not been a single serious incident. August 17th was supposed to be a routine training day. 500 soldiers were scheduled for exercises on Range 7, practicing with artillery and mortars. Sheila had personally inspected the range the day before. Everything had been in order. But Sheila wasn't on the range that day. She had been called to a meeting at headquarters to discuss budget matters. It was paperwork, administrative stuff, boring but necessary. She was sitting in a conference room with 3 other officers, reviewing spreadsheets, when she heard it. A sound like thunder, but worse, deeper, heavier. The building shook. Papers fell from the table. Someone screamed. Sheila's training took over instantly. She was on her feet, running to the window. In the distance, she could see smoke rising from the direction of Range 7. A lot of smoke. Black and thick. "Range 7, she said, her voice sharp and clear despite the fear flooding her body. "Get emergency services there now." The next hours were chaos. The explosion had happened in one of the ammunition storage bunkers near the training range. Later investigation would show that a piece of equipment had malfunctioned, causing a spark that ignited stored materials. The explosion had been massive. Miraculously, no one had been killed. But 73 soldiers had been injured, some seriously. Burns, broken bones, shrapnel wounds. The blast had been heard for miles. Buildings had been damaged across the base. Sheila had rushed to the scene immediately. She had coordinated the emergency response, making sure that no more ammunition was at risk of exploding. She had worked alongside firefighters and medics, her face covered in ash, her hands shaking, but her mind clear. She had done everything right. Everyone said so later. Her safety protocols had prevented an even worse disaster. The fact that no one had died was partially due to the evacuation procedures she had put in place. But as she stood there, watching injured soldiers being loaded into ambulances, watching young men and women crying in pain and fear, something broke inside her. These were soldiers she had trained, soldiers she knew by name, 20-year-olds who had trusted that the army would keep them safe, who had trusted that people like Sheila knew what they were doing, and she had failed them. Logically, she knew it wasn't her fault. The investigation would later show that the equipment failure had been unpredictable, that no amount of inspection could have prevented it. She had followed every protocol. She had done everything by the book. But logic didn't matter when she closed her eyes and saw their faces. After the accident, Sheila tried to continue her work. She filed reports. She cooperated with the investigation. She attended debriefings. But she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the smoke. She heard the screams. She felt the ground shake. She started making mistakes at work. Small ones at first, but mistakes nonetheless. She forgot meetings. She mixed up numbers in reports. Once, during an inspection, she had to stop and step outside because her hands were shaking too much to hold her clipboard. Her commanding officer noticed. Colonel Hampton was a good man, someone who cared about his soldiers. He called her into his office 6 weeks after the accident. "Captain Hunter," he said gently, "you need to take some leave. You've been through a trauma. You need time to recover." "I'm fine, sir," Sheila said automatically. "You're not fine," Colonel Hampton said. "And that's okay. That explosion was horrific. Anyone would be affected." "But it wasn't my fault," Sheila said, and she heard the desperation in her own voice. "The investigation cleared me. I followed every procedure." "I know," the colonel said, "but sometimes our hearts don't listen to logic. Take a month off, see a counselor, rest. Then we'll talk about your next steps. Sheila took the month. She went to counseling sessions where she sat stiffly and answered questions with single words. She stayed in her small flat and stared at the walls. She tried to read, to cook, to do normal things, but nothing felt normal anymore. When the month was up, she went back to Colonel Hampton's office. "I'm resigning," she said. The colonel looked sad, but not surprised. "Are you sure?" "I can't do this work anymore," Sheila said quietly. "Every time I look at ammunition, I see that explosion. Every time I hear a loud noise, I freeze. I'm a liability now." "You could transfer to a different role," the colonel suggested. "You have valuable experience. You could teach or work in administration." "No," Sheila interrupted. "I need to leave completely. I need to find something else. Something that doesn't involve any of this." Colonel Hampton had tried to convince her to reconsider, to at least take more time to think about it. But Sheila was firm. She had spent 18 years in the army. She had given everything she had, and now she had nothing left to give. She processed her resignation, packed up her belongings, and said goodbye to colleagues who didn't really understand why she was leaving. They tried to tell her it wasn't her fault, that she was one of the best ATOs in the service, that she should stay, but Sheila couldn't explain to them what it felt like to carry the weight of those 73 injured soldiers in her heart. How every day felt like walking through fog. How the smell of smoke or the sound of construction equipment could send her into a panic. She needed to disappear, to become someone else, to find a place where no one knew Captain Hunter and her failures. After leaving the army in October 1999, Sheila spent several weeks drifting. She stayed in cheap hotels, drove aimlessly through the English countryside, tried to figure out what to do with the rest of her life. She was 42 years old. She had no family. Her parents had died years ago, and she had been an only child. She had no close friends outside the military. She had spent her entire adult life in uniform, and now that was gone. She felt hollow, lost, purposeless. One day in early September, she was driving through rural England when she came upon a small town called Northvale. She had never heard of it before. It wasn't on any tourist maps or mentioned in guidebooks. It was just a quiet place in a valley surrounded by green hills. She stopped for petrol and a meal at a small cafe. The woman who served her was friendly, but not nosy. The food was simple, but good. Through the window, she could see people going about their daily lives, shopping, chatting, walking dogs. It seemed peaceful, ordinary, safe. On impulse, Sheila asked the woman if there were any rooms to rent in town. "You might try Mrs. Rodriguez," the woman said. "She has an apartment above her flower shop. Her last tenant just moved out." Sheila found the flower shop and met Mrs. Rodriguez, a kind woman in her 50s who spoke with a slight Spanish accent. The apartment was small, just a bedroom, a living room with a tiny kitchen and a bathroom. But it was clean and bright, with windows that looked out over the main street. "I'll take it," Sheila said, making the decision quickly before she could change her mind. Mrs. Rodriguez looked surprised. "Don't you want to see other places? Think about it?" "No," Sheila said. "This is fine. This is perfect." And that was how Sheila Hunter came to Northvale. Not because she had planned it, not because she knew anyone there, but because it was a place where no one knew her, where she could try to build a new life from nothing. The first year in Northvale was hard. Sheila had money saved from her military service, so she didn't have to worry about finances immediately. But she needed purpose. She needed something to do with her days, something to keep her mind occupied. The job at Martha Greenwood's antique shop came by chance. Sheila had wandered in one day, just looking around, and Martha had started talking to her about a dresser she was trying to restore. "The drawer keeps sticking," Martha said, showing Sheila the problem. "I've sanded it 3 times, but it still won't slide smoothly." Sheila looked at the drawer carefully. Her trained eye noticed immediately that the track was slightly warped. "You need to plane the bottom edge," she said. "Just a little, and maybe add some wax." Martha looked at her with interest. "You know about woodworking?" I've done some repair work," Sheila said vaguely. In truth, she had learned basic carpentry in the army. Soldiers needed to be able to fix equipment and build temporary structures. But she didn't want to mention her military background. "Would you be interested in a job?" Martha asked suddenly. "I could use help around here. The work isn't glamorous and the pay isn't great, but it's steady." Sheila had hesitated. She hadn't been looking for a job. She had been planning to just exist for a while. But maybe working would help. Maybe having a routine would make the days less empty. "Yes," she had said. "I'd like that." Working with Martha had been good for her. The old woman was patient and kind. She taught Sheila about different types of wood, about how to identify antiques, about the history of furniture styles. But more importantly, she gave Sheila space to heal. Martha never asked intrusive questions. She seemed to understand that Sheila needed privacy. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, or they talked about simple things, the weather, town gossip, interesting pieces that came into the shop. And slowly, very slowly, Sheila began to feel a little more human again. The nightmares didn't stop. She still woke up sweating and frightened several times a week. She still flinched at loud noises. She still felt the weight of guilt pressing on her chest. But the days became easier. The work gave her hands something to do, and her mind something to focus on. The simple act of restoring old furniture, taking something broken and making it beautiful again, felt meaningful in a way she hadn't expected. She started to notice the world around her again. The way the light came through the shop windows in the afternoon. The smell of fresh flowers from Mrs. Rodriguez's shop downstairs. The sound of children laughing as they walked past on their way home from school. Small things, normal things. Things that most people didn't even notice, but that felt precious to Sheila because she had been so lost in darkness for so long. One day, about a year after she arrived in Northvale, Martha said something that stuck with Sheila. They were working on an old table that had deep scratches and water damage. It looked beyond repair. But Martha was patiently sanding it down, removing the damaged layers to reveal the good wood underneath. "This is what I love about restoration," Martha said thoughtfully. "No matter how damaged something looks, there's usually something beautiful underneath. You just have to be patient enough to find it." Sheila had looked at the table, then at her own hands. Hands that had once handled explosives, that had been steady and sure, that had failed to prevent a disaster. "Do you really believe that?" she asked quietly. "That damaged things can be made beautiful again?" Martha had looked at her with wise, understanding eyes. "I believe that damage is part of the story, not the end of it. Every scratch and dent tells us what this piece has survived, and when we restore it, we're honoring both what it was and what it can become." Sheila had felt tears in her eyes, the first tears she had allowed herself since the accident. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope for her too. 5 years after arriving in Northvale, Sheila had saved enough money and gained enough confidence to open her own workshop. Martha was retiring, and while she offered to sell Sheila the antique shop, Sheila had different plans. She found a small building on Maple Street, a former storage space with good light and solid bones. She rented it, cleaned it out, and set up her furniture restoration business. She called it simply Sheila's Workshop. No fancy name, no grand ambitions, just honest work. She advertised with flyers at the library and the grocery store. Word of mouth did the rest. People in Northvale remembered her good work at Martha's shop. They brought her their damaged furniture, family heirlooms that needed repair, yard sale finds that needed love, practical pieces that just needed refreshing. Sheila discovered that she loved the work. Each piece was a puzzle to solve. How to fix this broken leg? What color would bring out the beauty of this wood? How to remove this stain without damaging the finish underneath? The work required focus and precision, skills she had developed in the army but could now use for creation instead of destruction. Her hands, which had once assembled weapons and handled explosives, now created beauty. She was good at it. People praised her work. They told their friends. Soon she had more business than she could handle, but she was careful not to take on too much. She wanted to keep the work manageable, peaceful. She wasn't trying to build an empire. She just wanted to live quietly and do good work. The workshop became her sanctuary. When she was there, surrounded by the smell of wood and paint, with her tools in her hands and a project in front of her, the memories receded. Not completely. They never went completely away, but enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to feel like maybe she was rebuilding herself the way she rebuilt furniture. Slowly, carefully, one layer at a time. As the years passed, Sheila gradually became woven into the fabric of Northvale. It started small. Emily Wilson, the teacher, asked if Sheila would donate a restored desk to the school library. Sheila agreed and spent 2 weeks making an old oak desk beautiful again. When she delivered it, Emily was so grateful that she hugged her, and Sheila found herself hugging back. The next year, the town was organizing its annual harvest festival, and they needed volunteers. Sheila offered to help set up booths, and later to run a children's craft table where kids could paint small wooden items. She enjoyed it more than she expected. The children were enthusiastic and creative, and their joy was infectious. A teenager named Marcus approached her afterward. "Could you teach me to do that?" he asked, gesturing to a restored chair on display. "I mean, not just painting, but the whole restoration thing?" Sheila had hesitated. She liked her solitude. She liked working alone. But something in the boy's eager face reminded her of the young soldiers she had trained. Their desire to learn, their need for guidance. "Come by my workshop on Saturday," she heard herself say. "I'll show you some basics." Marcus came, and he brought a friend. Then 2 more teenagers heard about it and asked to join. Before Sheila quite realized what was happening, she was running an informal summer workshop for local teenagers interested in learning woodworking and furniture restoration. She discovered that she was good at teaching. She was patient and clear, demanding but encouraging. The teenagers responded well to her calm authority. They worked hard and learned fast. She taught them practical skills, how to use tools safely, how to sand properly, how to apply finish evenly. But she also taught them patience, attention to detail, pride in craft. Some of the teenagers lost interest after a few weeks, but others stuck with it, coming back summer after summer, growing in skill and confidence. One girl, Jessica, who started coming to the workshop when she was 14, became particularly skilled. She went on to study furniture design at university and later started her own business in the city. She still credited Sheila as her inspiration. "You showed me that hands-on work could be creative and meaningful," Jessica told her years later. "That's a gift." Sheila didn't think of herself as giving gifts. She was just passing time, keeping busy, trying to be useful. But slowly, she realized that these connections, with Tom and Emily, with Martha, with the teenagers she taught, with the customers who trusted her with their precious belongings, were healing her in ways she hadn't expected. She was still private. She still kept her past hidden. But she wasn't isolated anymore. She was part of something. She belonged. Years passed in their gentle rhythm. Northvale didn't change much. A few families moved in, a few moved away. Children grew up and left for college or jobs in the city. The Harvest Festival came every October. The Christmas market every December. Sheila turned 50, then 55, then 60. Her hair went from dark brown to silver. She needed reading glasses for small print. Her knees complained a bit when she climbed ladders, but her hands were still steady. Her eye for beauty was still sharp. Her craftsmanship was still excellent. She had her routines and her friendships. She attended town meetings and church services occasionally, not because she was particularly religious, but because it was part of being in community. She voted in local elections. She supported the school fundraisers. She showed up when people needed help. She had become what she had hoped to become, just another resident of Northvale. Sheila, the furniture lady. Sheila, who taught the teenagers. Sheila, who always had a kind word and helped when you needed it. The nightmares became less frequent over the years, though they never completely stopped. Every few months, she would wake up gasping, seeing fire and hearing screams. But now she had ways to cope. She would get up, make tea, sit by the window. She would remind herself that she was safe, that the past was past, that she had built a good life despite everything. Sometimes she wondered about the soldiers who had been injured in the explosion. Were they okay? Had they recovered? Had they forgiven the army, even though there was no one really to blame? She had looked up news about the incident a few times over the years. Most of the injured had recovered. A few had left the military. One had written a book about his experience and recovery. None of them blamed her specifically. How could they, when the investigation had cleared her? But still, she carried them with her. Their names, their faces, they were part of her, woven into her history as surely as the paint stains on her apron. About 10 years after arriving in Northvale, Sheila met Dr. James Morrison under circumstances she would rather have avoided. She had slipped on ice outside her workshop one February morning and twisted her ankle badly. Tom had found her sitting on the sidewalk, pale with pain, and had insisted on driving her to the town clinic. Dr. Morrison had examined her ankle with gentle, efficient hands. "It's a bad sprain but not broken," he said. "You'll need to stay off it for a few weeks. Ice and elevation. I'll give you crutches and some pain medication." "A few weeks?" Sheila had protested. "I have work to do." "The work will wait," Dr. Morrison said firmly. "If you try to walk on this too soon, you'll make it worse and be out even longer." Sheila had grumbled, but obeyed. For 3 weeks, she hobbled around on crutches, frustrated by her limitations. Friends brought her groceries. Tom brought her meals from the cafe. Emily checked on her every day. Dr. Morrison stopped by her apartment one evening after his office hours, carrying a bag of medical supplies. "Just checking on my most stubborn patient," he said with a slight smile. "I'm not stubborn," Sheila said. "I just don't like sitting still." "I understand that," the doctor said, examining her ankle. "But healing requires patience. You can't rush it." As he wrapped her ankle with a fresh bandage, Sheila found herself studying him. He was a lean man with kind eyes and tired lines around his mouth. He moved with quiet competence, and there was something gentle in his manner that made people trust him. "How long have you been in Northvale?" she asked. 15 years, he said. "I came here after my wife died. I needed a change, like you did." Sheila was surprised. No one in town talked much about Dr. Morrison's past. "I'm sorry about your wife." "It was a long time ago," he said. "Cancer. She fought hard, but—" He shrugged, a gesture full of old pain. "I was a surgeon in London before that. High pressure, high stakes work. After Sarah died, I couldn't do it anymore. I needed something simpler, more human. so I came here to be a general practitioner in a small town." They looked at each other for a moment. Two people who had fled from pain and found refuge in Northvale. "We all carry our losses," Dr. Morrison said quietly. "The trick is not letting them define us completely." After that, they became friends. Not close friends. Both of them maintained their privacy, but friendly enough to have dinner together occasionally, to chat when they met on the street, to share companionable silence when words weren't needed. Sometimes Sheila wondered if something romantic might develop between them, but it never did. They were both too wounded, too careful. Their friendship was enough. As Sheila approached her 60th birthday in the summer of 2024, she felt a deep contentment that she had never expected to find again after the explosion. Her workshop was thriving. She had more work than ever, which was both satisfying and sometimes overwhelming. She had recently finished a beautiful restoration of an antique desk for the mayor's office and was working on a set of dining chairs for a family celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. Her teaching program had expanded. This summer, she had 12 teenagers in her workshop, learning everything from basic sanding to complex refinishing techniques. Two of her former students had come back as assistants, helping to guide the younger ones. She had even started writing a blog at Sarah Chen's suggestion. "You should document your work," Sarah had said. "Share your knowledge with more people." So, Sheila had started posting photos of her projects, along with explanations of her techniques. To her surprise, it had attracted a small but enthusiastic following. Life was good, calm, predictable. And then came the Tuesday meeting about the chemical storage building. That night, after the meeting, Sheila lay in bed, unable to sleep. She kept thinking about the building full of old chemicals. She kept imagining all the things that could go wrong. She told herself it wasn't her concern. The town would handle it. Experts would come in. Everything would be fine. But a small voice in her head whispered, "What if something happens before the experts arrive? What if there's an accident? What if people get hurt because no one really understands what's in that building?" She rolled over and punched her pillow, frustrated with herself. She had left that life behind. She didn't have to be responsible for every potential danger in the world. But the worry gnawed at her. 2 days later, she found herself walking past the old chemical storage building. It was about a mile from town, sitting at the end of a dirt road. It was a squat concrete structure, maybe 30 feet by 40 feet, with a flat roof and no windows. There were rusted chains on the doors and faded warning signs on the walls. She stood looking at it for a long time, her hands in her pockets, her heart beating faster than it should. This building was full of chemicals she would probably recognize. Industrial solvents, cleaning agents, maybe some acids or bases, sitting in there for more than 20 years, in containers that were probably corroding, labels that were probably fading. A ticking time bomb, really. She shook her head and walked away. "Not your problem," she told herself firmly. "Not anymore." But as she walked back toward town, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. July came in with unusual heat. Day after day, the temperature climbed above 90 degrees. Northvale, which usually had mild summers, sweltered. People bought fans and complained. The grass turned brown. The flowers wilted. The heat wave was forecast to last at least 2 weeks. Sheila worked in her workshop with all the windows open, but there was no breeze. The paint dried too quickly, making it harder to get smooth finishes. She drank water constantly and tried not to think about the chemical building baking in the sun. But she did think about it, more than she wanted to admit. Heat accelerated chemical reactions. Heat increased pressure in sealed containers. Heat could cause leaks or ruptures. She had learned all of this in her training. She had seen what could happen when chemicals were stored improperly, when containers failed, when dangerous substances mixed. You're being paranoid, she told herself. The building has been there for 25 years. It's been hot before. But this heat was extreme, record-breaking, according to the news. She tried to distract herself with work and with her summer students. But the worry was always there, humming in the back of her mind like an annoying insect. Tom noticed. You seem distracted, he said one morning when she came for her usual tea. Just the heat, Sheila said. Makes it hard to concentrate. But that wasn't really it, and they both knew it. On July 15th, 2 weeks into the heat wave, Sheila was working in her shop when Marcus, one of her former students, now a young man of 24, burst through the door. Miss Sheila, he said urgently. Something's wrong at that old chemical building. Sheila's stomach dropped. What do you mean? I was biking past there this morning, Marcus said, breathing hard. There's a weird smell coming from it, and I saw some kind of liquid leaking out under the door. Sheila was on her feet immediately. Did you call anyone? I came straight here, Marcus said. I remembered you talking about how dangerous old chemicals could be. I thought you'd know what to do. Sheila's mind raced. If chemicals were leaking, that meant container failure, which meant other containers might be failing too, which meant there could be dangerous fumes building up inside, which meant... Come on, she said, grabbing her phone. We need to get to the mayor's office right now. Mayor Foster was in a meeting, but when Sheila insisted it was an emergency, he came out immediately. There are chemicals leaking from the storage building, Sheila said without preamble. We need to evacuate the area and call in emergency services immediately. How do you know? The mayor asked. Marcus saw it, and I... She paused, then decided there was no time for false modesty. I have experience with hazardous materials. If something is leaking, we could have a serious problem very soon. The mayor looked at her with surprise, but didn't waste time asking questions. He picked up his phone and called the fire department, then the police, then the county emergency services. Within 20 minutes, fire trucks and police cars were heading toward the chemical building. Sheila and Marcus followed in Sheila's car. When they arrived, she could smell it immediately. A sharp, acrid smell that made her nose burn and her eyes water. It was the smell of industrial solvents, probably mixed with other chemicals. The fire chief, Daniel Torres, was a solid man in his 50s who took his job seriously. He approached Sheila. The mayor said you know about hazardous materials? I have some experience, Sheila said carefully. What's the situation? We can see liquid leaking from under the door, Chief Torres said. The smell is strong and getting stronger. I've called for a hazmat team from the county, but they won't be here for at least 2 hours. 2 hours, Sheila thought. A lot could happen in 2 hours. We need to evacuate anyone living nearby, she said, and we need to figure out what's in that building before the situation gets worse. The company records are long gone, the mayor said, having just arrived. We don't know exactly what's stored in there. Sheila closed her eyes briefly. Of course they didn't know. Why would anything be easy? Can I look at the building? She asked Chief Torres. It's not safe to go near, he said hesitantly. I know, Sheila said, but I need to assess the situation. I know what to look for. The chief studied her for a moment, clearly trying to figure out who this elderly furniture restorer thought she was. But something in Sheila's voice, the note of authority, the calm certainty, made him nod. Stay back at least 50 feet, he said, and if I say get back, you get back immediately. Understood. Sheila approached the building carefully, watching where she stepped, studying the ground for signs of more leakage. The liquid pooling near the door was clear with a slightly yellow tint. The smell was stronger here. Definitely organic solvents, maybe toluene or xylene. She circled the building slowly, noting the cracks in the concrete walls, the deterioration of the roof, the corrosion on the metal door. This building was a disaster waiting to happen. She was surprised it had lasted this long. When she came back to where Chief Torres and the mayor were waiting, her face was grim. "This is bad," she said quietly. "The building is falling apart. With this heat, the pressure inside could be building dangerously. If those chemicals are what I think they are, we could have an explosion or a toxic release that would threaten the whole town." The mayor's face went pale. "What can we do?" "We wait for the hazmat team and keep everyone away," Sheila said. "And we pray that nothing goes wrong in the next 2 hours." But prayers, as Sheila knew all too well, didn't always work. 90 minutes later, just when the hazmat team was supposed to be close, someone's phone rang with an emergency alert. "Fire at chemical storage building. Evacuate immediately." Sheila, who had been sitting in her car with Marcus, jumped out and ran toward the building. Smoke was pouring from the roof. Not thick black smoke yet, but gray and ominous. "Everyone back!" Chief Torres was shouting. "Back to the road!" But Sheila didn't go back. She ran to the fire chief. "What happened?" "We don't know," Torres said, his face tight with worry. "Something inside, maybe a container rupture from the heat, maybe a chemical reaction, started a fire." As they watched, orange flames began to lick through the smoke. "My people can't fight this," Torres said desperately. "We don't know what's in there. If we spray water on the wrong chemicals, we could make it worse. We could cause an explosion." Sheila felt her heart pounding. She felt the old familiar fear clawing up her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get away, to let someone else handle it. But there was no one else. The hazmat team was still 20 minutes away. The fire was spreading fast. In a few more minutes, the entire building could go up, releasing toxic fumes or worse across Northvale. People could die. Young people, innocent people, just like those soldiers 25 years ago. Unless someone who knew what they were doing took action right now. Sheila closed her eyes for just a moment. In her mind, she saw Captain Sheila Hunter in her uniform, steady and sure, walking toward danger because that was her job. She had run away from that person for 25 years. She had buried her. She had tried to become someone else. But that person was still inside her. And right now, those skills, that knowledge, that training, that ability to think clearly in crisis, were the only things that could save Northvale. She opened her eyes and looked at Chief Torres. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice clear and steady despite her racing heart. "My name is Sheila Hunter, and I spent 18 years in the British Army as an ammunition technical officer. I specialized in explosives and hazardous materials. I know how to handle this situation." Torres stared at her. "You're military?" "I was," Sheila said. "A long time ago, but I still remember everything. And right now, I'm the closest thing you have to an expert." The mayor, who had overheard, looked stunned. "You never told us." "There was no reason to tell anyone," Sheila said. "I left that life behind. But right now, we don't have time for explanations. We have a fire in a building full of unknown chemicals, and we need to act fast." Chief Torres made a decision. "What do you need?" "I need to know what chemicals are in there," Sheila said. "And I need to get inside to shut off any valves or vents that might be feeding the fire or could cause a bigger explosion." "Inside?" Torres looked horrified. "That's insane. You could be killed." "I'm 67 years old," Sheila said with a tight smile. "I've lived a good life, but if we don't do something right now, this fire could kill hundreds of people. I'm the only one here who has any idea what to look for." "I can't let you—" "You can't stop me," Sheila said firmly. "This is my decision, but I'll need protective gear, whatever you have. And I'll need some of your people ready with specific firefighting approaches based on what I find. Chief Torres looked at the burning building, then at Sheila's calm, determined face, then at the mayor. The mayor nodded slowly. If she says she can do this, we should let her try. Get her turnout gear, Torres ordered his firefighters, and breathing apparatus, the best we have. 5 minutes later, Sheila was dressed in firefighting gear that was too big for her, but better than nothing. The breathing apparatus fit awkwardly over her face. The heavy coat made her movements slow, but her mind was sharp and clear. This was what she had trained for. This was what she knew. Chief Torres gave her a radio. Stay in constant communication. At the first sign of serious danger, you get out. That's an order. Sheila almost smiled at that. She hadn't taken orders in 25 years, but she nodded. Marcus grabbed her arm. Miss Sheila, please be careful. She looked at this young man she had taught, who had brought her muffins and showed her pictures of his wedding plans, who represented everything good about her life in Northvale. I'll be back, she promised. I just need to make sure everyone stays safe. 2 firefighters cut through the chains on the door with bolt cutters. The metal door swung open, and a wave of heat and smoke rolled out. Sheila took a deep breath of filtered air from her breathing apparatus and walked into the building. Inside was chaos. Flames were eating through the wooden pallets that held rows of chemical containers. Some containers had already burst, their contents spilling and feeding the fire. The heat was immense. Smoke filled the air despite her breathing gear. But Sheila's trained eyes saw through the chaos. She identified containers by their shapes and labels, even when the labels were damaged. She recognized different types of storage systems and knew what they meant. There, in the far corner, was the main distribution valve for the building's old ventilation system. If she could close it, she could slow the spread of oxygen to the fire. There, on the left wall, were containers of what looked like acetone and other solvents. They needed to be cooled immediately, or they would explode. There, near the back, were barrels that looked like they contained some kind of acid. If the fire reached those, the resulting fumes would be deadly for miles around. Chief, she said into her radio, trying to keep her voice calm. I'm going to describe what I see. I need your people ready to respond as soon as I give the word. Go ahead, came Torres's voice. Sheila described the layout of the building, the types of chemicals she could identify, the immediate dangers. The acetone containers need cooling now, she said. But don't use water directly. Use fog spray to lower the ambient temperature around them. There are acid barrels in the northeast corner. Those need to be isolated. I'm going to try to close the main vent to reduce oxygen flow. She moved carefully through the burning building, her feet finding safe paths through debris. The heat was brutal even through the protective gear. Sweat poured down her face. Her hands were shaking, but whether from fear or exertion, she couldn't tell. The vent valve was old and corroded. It didn't want to turn. Sheila grabbed it with both hands and pulled with all her strength. Nothing. She tried again, grunting with effort. The metal was hot even through her gloves. Come on, she muttered. Come on. The valve suddenly gave way, turning with a screech of protesting metal. Sheila kept turning until it was fully closed. Immediately she could feel the difference. The fire didn't die down, but its spread slowed just a little. Vent closed, she reported. Start cooling the solvent containers. Gentle fog spray. Keep your distance. Through the smoke, she could hear the firefighters beginning their work outside. Now for the next problem, those acid barrels. She needed to make sure they were stable, that they weren't in danger of rupture. She made her way toward them, carefully avoiding puddles of unknown chemicals. Some of the flames were dying down where the firefighters were working. That was good. But the heat was still intense, and more containers could burst at any moment. Sheila reached the acid barrels. There were 4 of them, each marked with faded hazard symbols. She recognized them as containing sulfuric acid, extremely dangerous if released or mixed with other substances. 2 of the barrels looked stable, but one was bulging slightly, a sign of pressure building inside. If that barrel burst, everyone outside would need to evacuate immediately. "Chief," she said urgently, "one of the acid barrels is under pressure. I need to relieve it carefully or it could rupture." "Can you do that?" Torres asked, his voice tight with worry. "I can try," Sheila said, "but everyone needs to be ready to retreat if this goes wrong." Her hands were shaking badly now, not from fear, she realized, but from the memory of another time, another disaster. But she forced them to steady. She was not that person anymore. She was not helpless. She could fix this. The barrel had a pressure release valve at the top. It was designed to let excess pressure out gradually, but 25 years of corrosion had probably frozen it in place. Sheila reached up, the barrel was taller than she was, and found the valve. Using a piece of metal pipe she found on the ground, she tried to turn it. It wouldn't budge. She tried again, using all her strength. The pipe slipped, and she almost fell. She steadied herself and tried a different angle. "Come on," she whispered. "Please." The valve suddenly broke free. Sheila turned it slowly, carefully. A hiss of air, thankfully just air and not acid fumes, escaped. The bulging in the barrel gradually reduced. The danger passed. Sheila let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Pressure relieved," she reported. "But we still need to get those barrels out of here before the fire reaches them." "The hazmat team just arrived," Torres said. "They're setting up to extract the barrels now. Sheila, you need to come out. You've been in there too long." Sheila looked around the building one more time. The immediate crisis was contained. The fire was slowly being brought under control. The most dangerous chemicals were either secured or being addressed. She had done all she could. "Understood," she said. "Coming out." She walked back through the building, which looked less terrifying now that the immediate danger had passed. Firefighters were making their way in, properly equipped to finish the job. When she stepped outside, blinking in the bright sunlight, she was surrounded immediately. Marcus hugged her fiercely. The mayor looked like he might cry. Chief Torres grabbed her hand and shook it hard. "You just saved this whole town," he said with emotion. "We would have had a disaster without you." Sheila pulled off her breathing apparatus and wiped her sweaty face. She felt exhausted and shaky and older than her 67 years. But she also felt something else. Something she hadn't felt in 25 years. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she had finally made up for her past. The fire was fully extinguished by evening. The hazmat team finished removing all the dangerous chemicals safely. No one was hurt. The building was destroyed, but it had been scheduled for demolition anyway. Northvale was safe. News of what Sheila had done spread through the town within hours. By sunset, people were gathering at the scene, wanting to know what had happened, wanting to thank the woman who had saved them. Sheila had gone home to shower and change. When she came back to the scene, exhausted but unable to stay away, she found what looked like half the town waiting for her. Tom and Emily pushed through the crowd. "Sheila!" Emily exclaimed, her eyes red from crying. "We heard what you did. We can't believe—" She broke off, overwhelmed. Dr. Morrison was there too, his expression unreadable. "Military training?" he said quietly. "All these years, you never mentioned—" "I know," Sheila said. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Any of you. It's just, that part of my life was something I wanted to leave behind." The crowd had grown quiet, listening. Mayor Foster stepped forward. "I think everyone would like to hear the truth," he said gently, "if you're willing to share it." Sheila looked at all these faces, People she had lived among for 25 years, people she had helped and laughed with, people who thought they knew her. They deserved the truth. She took a deep breath. "My name is Sheila Hunter," she began. "But before I came to Northvale, I was Captain Sheila Hunter of the British Army. I served for 18 years as an ammunition technical officer. My job was to handle dangerous weapons, explosives, and hazardous materials." She paused, seeing shock and confusion on many faces. "I left the military 25 years ago after a terrible accident. There was an explosion at a training base. 73 soldiers were injured. It wasn't my fault, technically, but I was responsible for safety, and I felt like I had failed them. I couldn't continue doing that work. The weight of what had happened, it broke something in me." Her voice wavered slightly, but she kept going. "I came to Northvale because I needed to disappear. I needed to become someone else. Someone who didn't carry that responsibility. Who didn't have to think about dangerous things or worry about people getting hurt. I thought if I just lived quietly and did simple work, I could leave that person behind." She looked around at the crowd. "For 25 years, that's what I did. I became Sheila the furniture restorer. Just Sheila, who minds her own business and doesn't cause trouble. And that was enough. It was good." She gestured toward the burned chemical building. "But today, when I saw that fire, I realized something. I can't run away from who I was. That training, that knowledge, that experience. It's part of me whether I want it to be or not. And today, it saved lives. Maybe that's what it was always supposed to do." The crowd was silent for a long moment. Then Tom stepped forward and hugged her tightly. "You're still just Sheila to us," he said gruffly. "You're just Sheila who happens to be a hero." That broke the tension. People surged forward, not demanding explanations or treating her differently, just expressing their gratitude and relief. Marcus pushed through the crowd. "I can't believe you went into that burning building," he said, his voice shaking. "You could have died." "I know," Sheila said, "but I couldn't let people get hurt when I knew I could help. Not again." Dr. Morrison approached more slowly. He looked at her with new eyes, seeing not just the quiet furniture restorer, but the soldier underneath, the person who had carried a heavy burden for so many years. "You've been alone with this for 25 years, he said quietly. "That's a long time to carry such weight." "Yes," Sheila said simply. "It is." "You don't have to anymore," he said. "Now we know. Now we understand. And you're not alone." Sheila felt tears in her eyes, tears of relief, of exhaustion, of something that might have been healing. "Thank you," she whispered. The next few days were strange for Sheila. The story of what she had done spread beyond Northvale. News reporters came to interview her. She declined most requests. She didn't want fame or attention. But the local newspaper ran a feature story about Northvale's secret hero, and people from nearby towns drove over just to meet her. Sheila found it all a bit overwhelming. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. She just wanted to go back to her workshop and her quiet life. But things had changed. They couldn't go back to exactly how they were. People treated her with a new respect that was both gratifying and uncomfortable. They asked her advice about safety matters. They thanked her repeatedly. Some looked at her with something like awe, which made her squirm. "I'm not a hero," she told Tom one morning at the bakery. "I just did what needed to be done." "That's what heroes do," Tom said simply. The teenagers in her summer workshop were particularly excited. They wanted to hear stories about her military service, about the kinds of things she had done, about adventures she might have had. Sheila tried to explain that most military work was routine and boring. Training, paperwork, inspections. but they insisted on seeing her as something special. Marcus brought his fiancée to meet her. "This is the woman I told you about," he said proudly. "She's the reason I became interested in woodworking, and now we know she's also a genuine hero." "I'm just a person," Sheila protested. "A person who made mistakes and tried to fix them." But maybe that was enough. Maybe being a person who tried to fix things, who showed up when needed, who used whatever skills they had to help others, maybe that was what being a hero really meant. A week after the fire, Mayor Foster invited Sheila to his office for a private conversation. "I wanted to thank you again," he said, offering her tea. "And I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to help us in an official capacity." Sheila raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Well," the mayor said carefully, "it's clear that we didn't handle the chemical storage situation well. We should have dealt with it years ago. And when the crisis came, we had no idea what to do. If you hadn't been there—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. "I was thinking," he continued, "that the town could use a safety consultant, someone with expertise in hazardous materials and emergency preparedness, someone who could help us identify potential dangers and develop proper response plans. Would you consider it?" Sheila's first instinct was to refuse. She had spent 25 years trying to escape that kind of responsibility. But then she thought about what Dr. Morrison had said. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore." And she thought about the young soldiers she hadn't been able to save, and the townspeople of Northvale she had saved. Maybe one balanced the other, at least a little. "I'd need to think about it," she said slowly. "And it couldn't be a full-time job. I have my workshop." "Of course," the mayor said. "Just a consulting role, maybe a few hours a month, reviewing our facilities and procedures, training our emergency responders. We'd pay you fairly for your time." Sheila looked out the window at the town square, where people were going about their daily business, safe and unaware of how close they had come to disaster. "Let me think about it," she repeated, but she already knew what her answer would be. That evening, Sheila invited Dr. Morrison to her apartment for dinner. She cooked a simple meal, pasta with vegetables, fresh bread, a bottle of wine. They ate mostly in silence at first, comfortable as always with unspoken companionship. But Sheila knew she owed him more than that now. "You must have questions," she said finally. Dr. Morrison set down his fork. "Many, but only if you want to answer them." Sheila poured herself more wine and began to talk. She told him about her military career, not the dramatic parts that people imagined, but the reality of it, the long hours of training, the detailed inspections, the constant awareness that one mistake could cost lives. She told him about the soldiers she had trained, the respect she had earned, the pride she had felt in her work, and she told him about the explosion, about standing in that command center, hearing the sound, seeing the smoke, about running to the scene and finding chaos and pain, about the faces of young people who had trusted her to keep them safe. "I know it wasn't my fault," she said quietly. "Logically, I know that. The investigation made it clear. But logic doesn't help when you close your eyes and see their faces, when you remember their names." Dr. Morrison listened without interrupting. When she finally fell silent, he reached across the table and took her hand. "Trauma isn't logical," he said. "I learned that when Sarah died. I knew I had done everything possible to save her, the best doctors, the best treatments. But I still felt like I had failed her somehow. Like if I had been better or smarter or done something different, she would have lived." "Did that feeling ever go away?" Sheila asked. "Not completely," he admitted, "but it got smaller, less consuming. I learned to live with it instead of being crushed by it." He squeezed her hand. "What you did last week, walking into that burning building, using your skills to save people, that took incredible courage. It was also incredibly stupid, Sheila said with a slight smile. Maybe, Dr. Morrison agreed, but sometimes courage and stupidity look a lot alike. The difference is the outcome. They sat together as the evening light faded, two people who had known loss and found unexpected peace in a small town far from their old lives. "Thank you for telling me," Dr. Morrison said eventually, "for letting me see all of you, not just the parts you wanted to show." "Thank you for listening," Sheila said, "and for not making me feel like I'm defined by my past." "We all have pasts," he said, "but we're more than the worst things we've experienced or the biggest mistakes we've made. You taught me that just by being who you are." After he left, Sheila sat by her window, looking out at Northvale. For the first time in 25 years, she felt like she could breathe fully. The weight she had been carrying hadn't disappeared, but it was lighter now, shared. She thought about the mayor's offer, about accepting that part of herself she had tried to deny, about using her skills and knowledge not to hide from the past, but to honor it. She thought about those 73 soldiers and about the 2,000 people of Northvale who were safe because she had been brave enough to step forward. Maybe she couldn't change what had happened 25 years ago, but she could change what happened from this day forward. The following Monday, Sheila went to the mayor's office. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll be your safety consultant." Mayor Foster's face lit up with relief. "Thank you. I was hoping you'd say yes." They worked out the details. Sheila would review all town facilities for potential hazards: the school, the community center, any businesses that used chemicals or had old equipment. She would work with Chief Torres to develop emergency response protocols. She would conduct training sessions for first responders. A few hours a month, as promised. Nothing overwhelming, but enough to make a difference. "There's one condition," Sheila said. "I want to be involved in safety education for young people, teaching them about hazards, how to recognize dangers, what to do in emergencies, not to scare them, but to empower them with knowledge." "That's an excellent idea," the mayor said. "We can integrate it into the school curriculum." As Sheila walked back to her workshop, she felt something she hadn't expected: excitement. For 25 years, she had used only a small part of herself, the part that worked with wood and paint. Now she could use more of who she was: the analytical mind, the technical knowledge, the teaching ability. She could help people not by hiding who she had been, but by embracing it. Her teenage students were thrilled when she announced that she would be expanding the summer workshop to include basic safety training along with woodworking. "We'll learn about using tools safely, yes," Sheila explained to the group of 12 young people gathered in her workshop, "but also about recognizing hazards in your environment, understanding chemicals that might be in your homes or schools, knowing what to do in emergencies." "Cool," said a 15-year-old girl named Maya. "My mom is always worried about me getting hurt. If I learn this stuff, maybe she'll worry less." "Exactly," Sheila said. "Knowledge is the best protection." She started incorporating short safety lessons into each workshop session. She taught them about different types of fire extinguishers and when to use each one. She showed them how to read chemical labels. She explained what to do if they encountered a hazardous spill or a strange smell. The teenagers absorbed it all eagerly. They asked intelligent questions. They took notes. Marcus, who still visited regularly even though he was no longer a student, watched one of these sessions with a smile. "You're a natural teacher," he said afterward. "You should have been doing this all along." "Maybe," Sheila said, "but I wasn't ready until now." At the Harvest Festival that October, the town organized a special ceremony. Sheila had asked them not to make a big fuss, but they insisted on doing something to mark what she had done. Mayor Foster stood on the stage in the town square where hundreds of people had gathered. Sheila sat uncomfortably in a folding chair to the side, wishing she could disappear. This summer, the mayor began, we faced a crisis that could have ended in tragedy. Instead, it ended in victory, thanks to one person's courage and expertise. He told the story of the fire, though he left out the most frightening details to avoid alarming people. He described how Sheila had walked into a burning building and used her military training to prevent disaster. Sheila Hunter has lived among us for 25 years, he continued. We thought we knew her as a skilled craftsperson and a kind neighbor. Now we know she's also a hero, not just for what she did this summer, but for choosing to use her knowledge and skills to protect us even after she had spent so many years trying to leave that part of her life behind. The crowd applauded. Sheila felt her face getting hot. On behalf of the town of Northvale, Mayor Foster said, I want to present Sheila with this plaque in recognition of her service and bravery, and to announce that she has agreed to serve as our town safety consultant, helping to keep Northvale safe for years to come. More applause, louder this time. People stood up. Someone started chanting, Sheila, Sheila, and others joined in. Sheila stood reluctantly and walked to the stage. She accepted the plaque, which read, In recognition of extraordinary courage and service, Sheila Hunter, Northvale's guardian. She looked out at the crowd, at faces she knew, at children she had taught, at friends she had made over a quarter century. They were smiling at her with love and gratitude. She cleared her throat, suddenly emotional. I don't think of myself as a hero, she said, her voice carrying across the quiet square. I'm just someone who had specific knowledge and used it when it was needed. Any of you would have done the same in my position. She paused, gathering her thoughts. For a long time, I ran away from my past. I thought that the only way to deal with pain and failure was to leave it behind completely. But this summer taught me something important. We can't separate ourselves from our experiences. They're part of us, good and bad. The question is what we choose to do with them. She held up the plaque. This honor doesn't just belong to me. It belongs to everyone who taught me, everyone who trained me, everyone I served with. And it belongs to this community, which gave me a second chance when I needed it most. Her voice got quieter, more personal. 25 years ago, I came here broken and lost. You didn't ask me to explain myself. You just accepted me. You gave me work and friendship and purpose. You let me heal. And when the time came, when I needed to step forward and be someone I thought I'd left behind, you supported that too. She looked directly at Tom and Emily, at Dr. Morrison, at Marcus, at all the faces of people who had become her family. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for making Northvale my home. The applause this time was different, softer, more intimate. People weren't just cheering a hero. They were welcoming home one of their own. In the months that followed, Sheila settled into her new dual role. She continued running her workshop and restoring furniture. That would always be the core of her identity. But now she also spent several hours each week on safety work. She conducted a thorough survey of town facilities and was relieved to find that most were in good condition. The school's chemistry lab needed better ventilation, and the gas station needed updated fire suppression systems, but nothing catastrophic. She developed emergency response plans with Chief Torres and trained the fire department in how to handle different types of hazardous materials. She worked with local businesses to ensure they were storing chemicals properly and had adequate safety equipment. And she started teaching safety courses at the school, at the community center, anywhere people were interested in learning. Her most popular class was called Household Hazards: How to Keep Your Family Safe. She taught people about reading labels on cleaning products, storing chemicals properly, recognizing the signs of gas leaks or electrical problems, knowing when to call professionals. Most accidents are preventable, she told her students. You don't need military training to be safe. You just need to pay attention and think ahead. Emily attended one of her classes and approached her afterward with tears in her eyes. I had no idea about half of this stuff, she said. We keep all our cleaning products under the sink where the grandkids can reach them. I'm going to move them tonight. That's why I teach this, Sheila said. Simple knowledge saves lives. One afternoon in November, Sheila received an unexpected phone call. Is this Captain Sheila Hunter? Asked an unfamiliar voice. Sheila's stomach tightened. No one had called her captain in 25 years. This is Sheila Hunter. Who is this? My name is Colonel David Bradley. I'm with the British Army's Ammunition Technical Officer Association. We track down former ATOs to maintain our alumni network. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. We saw the news story about what you did in Northvale. Sheila sat down slowly. How did you find me? The news article mentioned your military background, Colonel Bradley explained. It wasn't hard to trace. Listen, I'm calling because we're organizing a reunion next year for ATOs who served in the 1990s. We'd be honored if you would attend. I don't think so, Sheila said quickly. I understand you might have reservations, the colonel said. But I think you should know. Many of the soldiers who were injured in the Thornwood explosion will be there. They've heard about what you did in Northvale, and several have asked if they could meet you. Sheila's breath caught. They want to meet me? Captain Hunter, or Sheila if you prefer, you were one of the best ATOs in the service. Everyone knows that. The Thornwood explosion was a tragedy, but it wasn't your fault. Your safety procedures saved lives that day. Many more people could have been hurt if not for your protocols. I left, Sheila said. I ran away. You left after a traumatic experience, Colonel Bradley corrected gently. That's not the same as running away. But you took everything you learned and used it to save a town. That's not the action of someone who quit. That's the action of someone who found a different way to serve. Sheila was quiet for a long moment. I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all I ask, the colonel said. The reunion is in March. I'll send you the details. I hope to see you there. After hanging up, Sheila sat staring at the phone for a long time. The soldiers from Thornwood wanted to meet her. They didn't blame her. They saw her as a hero, not a failure. Could she face them? Could she look them in the eyes after all these years? She didn't know. But maybe it was time to find out. December brought Northvale's annual Christmas market, and despite everything that had happened that year, the tradition continued. The town square was decorated with lights and evergreen garlands. Vendors set up stalls selling crafts, baked goods, and hot cider. Sheila had a booth where she displayed and sold some of her restored furniture pieces. It had become a tradition. People loved to buy unique gifts, and Sheila enjoyed the festive atmosphere. This year, though, her booth attracted more attention than usual. People stopped by not just to shop, but to talk to her, to thank her again, to tell her how glad they were that she was part of their community. A young woman approached with a small child in tow. Miss Hunter? I don't think we've met. I'm Jennifer Morris. I just moved to Northvale this fall. I wanted to thank you for making this town safe for my daughter. Sheila looked at the little girl, who was maybe 4 years old with bright, curious eyes. What's your name? She asked the child. Emma, the little girl said shyly. That's a beautiful name, Sheila said. She pulled out a small wooden box from under her table, something she had made as a practice piece. It was painted with flowers and had a simple latch. Would you like this? You could keep special things in it. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Really, Sheila said, handing it to her. "What do you say, Emma?" Jennifer prompted. "Thank you," the little girl said, clutching the box happily. After they left, Dr. Morrison, who had been watching from a nearby booth, came over. "You're good with children," he observed. "I like their honesty," Sheila said. "They don't pretend to be something they're not." "Unlike adults," Dr. Morrison said with a slight smile. "Unlike me, you mean," Sheila corrected. "For 25 years. You weren't pretending," he said thoughtfully. "You were protecting yourself. There's a difference." Sheila arranged some items on her table. "I got a call from the army," she said suddenly. "They want me to attend a reunion. Some of the soldiers from Thornwood will be there." Dr. Morrison's expression became serious. "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified," Sheila admitted, "but also curious, maybe even a little hopeful. Is that crazy?" "Not at all," he said. "It sounds like you're ready to close the circle, to face the past not as something to run from, but as something to integrate and accept." "When did you become so wise?" Sheila asked with a slight smile. "I had a good teacher," he said, nodding toward her. "A woman who showed me that it's possible to survive tragedy and still build a meaningful life." January came with snow and cold, giving Northvale a peaceful, hushed quality. Sheila spent long hours in her workshop, which she had equipped with a good heater. She worked on a large dining table that someone had commissioned for their family, 8 people gathering around it for meals and celebrations. As she sanded and stained and carefully crafted, she thought about tables and gathering, about families and connections, about the ways people came together and supported each other. She thought about her life before Northvale, years of service, of responsibility, of carrying weight alone. She thought about her life in Northvale, years of hiding, of healing, of slow and careful reconstruction of a broken self. And she thought about her life now, no longer hiding, no longer running, but also no longer alone, using all of herself, both the parts she was proud of and the parts that carried pain. On a particularly cold evening, she was closing up the workshop when Tom appeared at the door with a thermos. "Soup," he announced. "Emily made too much, as usual. Thought you might like some." They sat together in the workshop, drinking soup and talking about nothing in particular, the weather, town gossip, plans for the spring. "You seem different lately," Tom said eventually. "More settled, maybe?" Sheila considered this. "I think I've stopped fighting myself," she said. "For so long, I was trying to be someone I wasn't, or trying to not be someone I was. It's exhausting, living like that. And now I'm just me, all of me, the military officer and the furniture restorer, the person who failed and the person who saved a town, the private person and the teacher, all of it together." Tom nodded slowly. "That sounds like wisdom." "Or maybe just age," Sheila said with a laugh. "When you're 67, you get tired of pretending." "Whatever it is, it suits you," Tom said. In February, as spring began to hint at its arrival with longer days and melting snow, Sheila made her decision. She called Colonel Bradley and told him she would attend the reunion in March. "I'm glad," he said warmly. "I think you'll find it healing." "I hope so," Sheila said. "I'm bringing a friend with me. Is that all right?" "Of course." Spouses and partners are welcome. Dr. Morrison had offered to accompany her when she told him about the reunion. "You shouldn't face this alone," he had said. "We're not dating," Sheila had felt compelled to point out. "I know," he had said with a slight smile, "but we're friends who have both survived difficult things. Sometimes that's more important than romance." In the weeks before the reunion, Sheila found herself thinking more and more about the past. Not with the usual fear and guilt, but with something closer to curiosity. What had happened to all those soldiers? How had they recovered? What were their lives like now? And what would they think of her? This elderly woman who had abandoned her post and hidden for a quarter century. She tried to prepare herself for anger or disappointment. But when she voiced this concern to Dr. Morrison, he shook his head. From what Colonel Bradley said, they don't see it that way. They see someone who did heroic work, experienced trauma, and then did heroic work again. That's a story of resilience, not failure. I wish I could see it that way, Sheila said. Maybe after the reunion you will, he suggested. The reunion was held at a hotel in London. Sheila and Dr. Morrison took the train from Northvale, and she spent most of the journey staring out the window, her stomach churning with nerves. You can leave at any time, Dr. Morrison reminded her. If it's too much, we'll just go. I know, Sheila said, but I need to do this. I need to face them. When they arrived at the hotel, there was a registration table in the lobby. Sheila approached it hesitantly. The woman at the table looked up and her face broke into a huge smile. Captain Hunter, welcome. We're so happy you could make it. Just Sheila, please, Sheila said. Of course, Sheila. I'm Lieutenant Commander Parks. I served as an ATO in the 2000s, so we never overlapped. But I've heard so much about you. Your work on safety protocols influenced training for years after you left. Sheila blinked. Really? Oh yes, you were considered one of the best. Everyone was sorry when you resigned. She gave Sheila a name tag and directed her to the main ballroom where people were gathering. Taking a deep breath, Sheila walked in with Dr. Morrison at her side. The room was full of people, maybe 200 former and current military personnel. Some were young, some were old. Some wore uniforms, some wore civilian clothes. They were talking and laughing, clearly happy to see each other. Sheila felt overwhelmed. She didn't recognize anyone at first. Then a voice called out, Captain Hunter? She turned. A man in his late 40s was approaching, walking with a slight limp. He had kind eyes and graying hair. I'm Stephen Collins, he said. I don't know if you remember me. I was at Thornwood. I was injured in the explosion. Sheila's heart stopped. She stared at him, unable to speak. I've wanted to meet you for 25 years, Stephen continued. To thank you. Thank me? Sheila finally managed. Why would you thank me? Because your safety protocols saved my life, he said simply. The evacuation procedures you put in place, the way you had organized the training area, those things meant that when the explosion happened, most of us were far enough away to survive. Without your work, many more people would have died. Sheila shook her head. But people were hurt. 73 people. Would have been 700 without you, Stephen interrupted. Or more. We all know that. Everyone who was there knows that. Other people were gathering now. Some of them Sheila recognized. Older now, changed by time, but still familiar. A woman stepped forward. Captain Hunter, I'm Laura Bennett. I lost my leg in the explosion. Sheila looked at her, seeing the truth of it in the way she stood. I've spent 25 years, Laura continued, thankful that I only lost a leg, that I didn't die, that I got to have a life, get married, have children. And I've always known that I got those things because you were a careful, thorough officer who put safety first. I ran away, Sheila whispered. I left you all. You left after a trauma, Stephen said gently. That's different. And now we hear you saved an entire town using those same skills. That's not running away. That's carrying forward. More people wanted to talk to her. They shared their stories. Some had stayed in the military. Some had left. Some had struggled with injuries and trauma. Some had recovered quickly. But all of them wanted her to know that they didn't blame her, had never blamed her, understood why she had left. You taught me that safety isn't just about following rules, said a man who had been one of her students. You taught me that it's about caring enough to pay attention. That lesson saved my life multiple times after you left. Colonel Bradley found her later in the evening. I'm glad you came, he said. So am I, Sheila admitted. She felt lighter than she had in decades, as if a weight she had been carrying had finally been set down. There's someone else who wants to meet you, the colonel said, if you're up for it. He led her to a quiet corner where an older woman sat in a wheelchair. She looked to be in her 70s, with alert eyes and a warm smile. Sheila Hunter, the woman said. I'm General Patricia Henderson. I was the base commander at Thornwood. Sheila remembered her. She had been Colonel Henderson then, a sharp and demanding officer who expected excellence. General, Sheila said formally. Oh, stop that, the general said with a wave of her hand. We're both retired. Call me Patricia. She gestured to the chair next to her. Sit, please. Sheila sat, and Dr. Morrison politely moved away to give them privacy. I've thought about you often over the years, Patricia said. I understood why you left, but I always regretted that you felt you had to. You were one of my best officers. I failed, Sheila said quietly. No, Patricia said firmly. An equipment malfunctioned. That's what failed. You did everything right. The investigation proved that. Your procedures and training minimized the casualties. If anyone else had been in your position, someone less thorough, less careful, the disaster would have been much worse. Then why did I feel so guilty? Sheila asked. Because you cared, Patricia said simply. You cared about those soldiers. You took your responsibilities seriously. When they were hurt, even though it wasn't your fault, you felt that pain. That's not weakness, Sheila. That's humanity. She reached out and took Sheila's hand. I heard about what you did in Northvale. Walking into that burning building took courage. Using your knowledge to save people took skill. You're still the same excellent officer you always were. You just found a different way to serve. Sheila felt tears running down her face. She didn't try to stop them. I've spent 25 years punishing myself, she said. I know, Patricia said gently. It's time to stop. It's time to forgive yourself and recognize that you did good work then, and you do good work now. They sat together for a while, two old soldiers who had both carried heavy burdens. Finally, Sheila said, Thank you, for understanding, for not being angry. Oh, I was angry, Patricia admitted. When you resigned, I was frustrated because I knew I was losing a valuable officer, but I was never angry at you. I was angry at the situation, at the unfairness of it, at the fact that good people sometimes experience terrible things. She squeezed Sheila's hand. Go home to your town, Sheila. Keep doing your good work, and know that everyone here is proud of you, not despite what happened, but because of how you handled it and what you've become. On the train back to Northvale, Sheila was quiet. Dr. Morrison didn't push her to talk. He just sat beside her, a steady presence. Finally, as they neared home, Sheila spoke. I wasted so much time, she said. 25 years, hating myself for something that wasn't really my fault. You didn't waste them, Dr. Morrison said. You spent them healing, building a new life, learning to be a different kind of person. All of that mattered. I could have stayed in touch with those people. They wanted to support me. Maybe, he agreed, but maybe you needed to be completely separate from that world in order to heal. There's no right way to deal with trauma, Sheila. You did what you needed to do to survive. She looked out at the passing countryside, thinking about what General Henderson had said, about forgiveness, about moving forward. I think, she said slowly, that I'm ready to stop running To accept all of myself, the failures and the successes, the pain and the healing, all of it. I think you've been ready for a while, Dr. Morrison said. You just needed someone to give you permission. Did you need permission too? Sheila asked. To stop blaming yourself for Sarah's death? Yes, he said quietly. Though I gave it to myself eventually. It took years, but I finally accepted that I did everything I could, that some things are beyond our control, that love doesn't mean being able to prevent all suffering. They smiled at each other, two people who understood loss and healing and the long, difficult work of forgiveness. When the train pulled into Northvale's small station, Tom and Emily were waiting for them. Emily hugged Sheila immediately. How did it go? She asked. Better than I expected, Sheila said. Much better. Good, Tom said gruffly. Because we missed you. 2 days is too long. Sheila laughed. I was only gone for a weekend. Still too long, Emily insisted. As they walked back into town together, Sheila and Dr. Morrison, Tom and Emily, Sheila felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She felt at peace. Spring arrived in Northvale with the usual burst of color and life. Trees bloomed, flowers pushed through the soil, and people emerged from their winter hibernation to enjoy the warming days. Sheila's workshop was busy with projects. People wanted furniture restored for spring cleaning and outdoor entertaining. She hired 2 assistants, former students of hers, to help with the increased workload. Her safety consulting work was also going well. She had completed her survey of town facilities and was now working on long-term improvements. The school had installed the better ventilation system. The gas station had upgraded its fire suppression. Several businesses had implemented new chemical storage protocols based on her recommendations. She continued teaching her safety classes, which had become popular. People appreciated her clear, practical approach and her ability to explain complex topics in simple terms. You should write a book, Sarah Chen suggested one day at the library, about household safety. It would help so many people. Sheila was surprised by the idea, but also intrigued. Maybe, she said. Let me think about it. In her free time, she worked on her blog, which had grown to attract readers from around the world. People shared photos of their restoration projects and asked for advice. She found she enjoyed this connection, this ability to help people even far away. Marcus got married in April, and Sheila attended the wedding with great joy. She had made them a beautiful hope chest as a gift, a traditional wedding present made with her best craftsmanship. You've taught me so much, Marcus said at the reception, a little tipsy on champagne. Not just about woodworking, but about integrity and patience and caring about your work. I'm the person I am partly because of you. Sheila hugged him tightly. You were always going to be a good person, Marcus. I just helped you along the way. She did decide to write a book. With Sarah's help, she outlined it carefully. A practical guide to household safety covering everything from properly storing cleaning products to recognizing electrical hazards to knowing when to call professionals. She wrote it the way she had taught her classes, clearly, simply, without jargon, focused on practical actions people could take. She included illustrations and checklists. She wrote it for ordinary people who wanted to keep their families safe but didn't have technical training. Writing the book meant thinking through everything she had learned over her career. The principles of safety, the importance of awareness, the value of preparation. It meant organizing knowledge she had carried in her head for decades and making it accessible to others. It was harder than restoring furniture, but satisfying in a different way. Each chapter completed felt like a small gift to the world. Knowledge that could prevent accidents, save lives, give people confidence. Dr. Morrison read her drafts and offered feedback. You write the way you talk, he observed. That's good. It makes it accessible. I don't want it to sound academic, Sheila said. I want people to actually read it and use it. They will, he said confidently. She worked on the book through the summer, fitting it in between her workshop projects and consulting work. By autumn, she had a complete draft. Sarah helped her find a small publisher that specialized in practical guides. They were enthusiastic about the project. Safety guides usually come from corporations or government agencies, the editor told her. Having one written by someone with real-world experience who can explain things clearly, that's valuable. People will respond to this. The book was scheduled for publication the following spring. Sheila was both excited and nervous about it. She wasn't sure she wanted more attention or recognition. But if the book helped even a few families avoid accidents, it would be worth it. As the year progressed, other changes came to Northvale. Tom and Emily's daughter announced she was pregnant with her first child. The whole bakery buzzed with excitement about becoming grandparents. Emily immediately started knitting baby clothes. The town voted to renovate the community center, which badly needed updating. Sheila was on the planning committee, reviewing designs for safety and accessibility. Dr. Morrison's son, who had lived in the city for years, decided to move back to Northvale with his own family. I want my kids to grow up somewhere like this, he told his father. Somewhere with community. And Sheila's summer workshop reached its highest enrollment yet. 18 teenagers eager to learn woodworking and safety skills. One of the new students was Emma Morris, the little girl Sheila had given the wooden box to at the Christmas market. Well, not so little now. She was 15 and interested in carpentry. My mom says you're the bravest person in Northvale, Emma told Sheila on the first day. She says you saved everyone. I did what needed to be done, Sheila said. That's all any of us can do. Use our skills and knowledge to help when help is needed. I want to learn to do that, Emma said seriously. To be useful, to have skills that matter. Sheila smiled. Then you've come to the right place. August 17th came, the 26th anniversary of the Thornwood explosion. For 25 years, Sheila had spent this day in quiet misery, remembering and regretting. But this year felt different. She woke early and made tea. She sat by her window and thought about those 73 soldiers. But instead of drowning in guilt, she found herself thinking about what they had told her at the reunion, about their gratitude, about their lives continuing because of the safety measures she had put in place. She thought about the people of Northvale, safe because she had been brave enough to face a crisis. She thought about the teenagers she had taught, armed with knowledge that would keep them safer throughout their lives. She thought about the book she was writing, which would reach even more people. The explosion at Thornwood had been terrible. People had been hurt. That pain was real and couldn't be erased. But the story didn't end there. It couldn't end there. Because life went on and healing happened, and the knowledge gained from tragedy could be used to prevent future tragedies. She was part of that continuum of learning from pain, of using experience to help others, of turning suffering into service. Around 10 o'clock, Dr. Morrison called. "How are you doing today?" "I'm okay," Sheila said, and she meant it. "I'm actually okay." "Good," he said. "Would you like company, or would you rather be alone?" "Company would be nice," she said. He came over an hour later with lunch from the cafe. They ate together, and she told him what she had been thinking about. "You've come a long way," he observed, "from the person who couldn't sleep, who jumped at loud noises, who carried all that weight alone." "I still have nightmares sometimes," Sheila admitted. "I still flinch at sudden sounds. But it doesn't control me anymore. It's just part of who I am, like my memories of good days in the military, like my love for woodworking, like my friendships here." "That's the nature of healing," Dr. Morrison said. "Not forgetting or erasing, but integrating, making peace with all of yourself." They spent the afternoon walking in the hills around Northvale, enjoying the summer weather and each other's company. It was a good day, not perfect, not without its difficult moments, but good. And that was enough. That fall, Northvale experienced its own small crisis. Nothing dangerous, but significant. A major storm knocked out power to the town for 3 days. Trees fell across roads. The hospital had to run on generators. Many homes lost heat. But the community came together. The community center opened as a warming station. People with generators shared power with neighbors. Tom's Bakery, which had gas ovens, stayed open to provide hot food. And Sheila, using her knowledge of emergency preparedness, helped coordinate the town's response. She worked with the mayor and emergency services to ensure vulnerable people were identified and helped. She organized volunteers to check on elderly residents. She made sure the hospital's generators were running properly and safely. It was a small crisis compared to the chemical fire, but it showed how much the town had changed its approach to emergency management. They were prepared now. They had plans and training. They knew who to call and what to do. "You've made us safer in so many ways," Mayor Foster told Sheila after power was restored. "Not just by walking into that fire, but by everything you've done since. The training, the planning, the education. You've given this whole community confidence." "That was always the goal," Sheila said. "Not to make people afraid of dangers, but to empower them to handle whatever comes." Sheila's book, Safe at Home, A Practical Guide to Household Safety, was published in April, just before her 68th birthday. The publisher arranged a small book signing at the library in Northvale. Sheila had expected maybe 20 people to show up. Instead, over 100 came. Townspeople who wanted to support her, former students, people from neighboring towns who had heard about her work. Sarah Chen introduced her. "Sheila Hunter is many things to this community," she said. "A skilled craftswoman, a dedicated teacher, a hero who saved us from disaster. But above all, she's someone who cares deeply about keeping people safe. This book is an extension of that care, and I know it will help countless families." Sheila spoke briefly, explaining why she had written the book and what she hoped readers would take away from it. Then she signed copies for a line of people that seemed to go on forever. "My granddaughter is starting her own apartment," one elderly woman said. "This is the perfect gift." "I'm a new parent," a young man told her. "This is exactly what I need." "You probably saved my life once already," a middle-aged woman said. "Now you're going to help me keep my kids safe too." Each person, each story, reminded Sheila why she had written the book. This was her service now, not handling explosives or fighting fires, but sharing knowledge in a way that could ripple out and protect people she would never meet. The book sold well, beyond anyone's expectations. It got good reviews. A national newspaper ran a feature about the military officer turned furniture restorer who became her town's guardian and then wrote a book to help everyone stay safe. Sheila found the attention both gratifying and uncomfortable. She still didn't think of herself as anyone special, but she was learning to accept that others saw her differently, and that was okay. In June, Colonel Bradley called again. "Sheila," he said, "I have a favor to ask. The Army wants to update its safety training programs for ammunition technical officers. Would you be willing to consult on the project? Share your insights about what makes effective safety protocols?" Sheila was surprised. "They want my input?" "Very much so," the colonel said. "Your work has been studied for years, and what you did in Northvale, the way you assessed that situation and responded, that's the kind of thinking and decision-making we want to train into new officers." Sheila thought about it. A year ago, she would have said no immediately. Even 6 months ago, she would have been hesitant. But now, Yes, she said. I'd be happy to help. She spent several weeks working with the Army's training division, reviewing materials, sharing her experiences, explaining the philosophy behind her approach to safety. It's not just about following rules, she told the current generation of ATOs. It's about understanding why those rules exist, thinking ahead about what could go wrong, caring enough about the people you're protecting to be thorough even when it's tedious. The young officers listened to her with respect. Some of them knew her reputation. Others just recognized the voice of experience and wisdom. One young woman approached her after a session. Captain Hunter. Just Sheila, Sheila interrupted gently. Sheila, then. I wanted to say that I heard about what happened at Thornwood. I know that was difficult for you. But I also want you to know that your safety protocols are still taught in our training. You've influenced how this entire field operates. Even though you left, your work continued. Sheila felt emotion tighten her throat. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more than you know. When the consulting work was finished and she returned to Northvale, she felt like something had finally come full circle. She had left the military thinking she had failed. But her work had mattered. It still mattered. And now she could contribute to it again, in a different way, without the weight of active duty and responsibility that had crushed her before. She had found a way to honor both her past and her present, to be both the soldier she had been and the craftswoman and teacher she had become. She was whole. The summer workshop that year was the best yet. 18 teenagers learned woodworking, restoration techniques, and safety principles. Several of them created impressive projects: a restored chair, a handmade table, a carefully painted dresser. On the last day of the workshop, Sheila gathered them all together. You've learned a lot this summer, she said. Skills with tools, knowledge about wood and finishing, understanding of safety principles. But I hope you've learned something else too. They looked at her attentively. I hope you've learned that work can be meaningful, that taking care with what you do matters, that patience and attention to detail create quality, and that using your skills to help others, whether by making something beautiful or by keeping people safe, is one of the most valuable things a person can do. Emma Morris raised her hand. Can I say something? Of course. You've taught us that it's never too late to use what you know for good, Emma said. That even if you've been through hard things, you can still help people. That's the most important lesson. Sheila felt her eyes getting damp. Yes, she said. That's exactly right. After the students left, Marcus helped her clean up the workshop. You're good at this, he said. Teaching, I mean. You should do it more. I'm thinking about it, Sheila admitted. Maybe run workshops year-round, not just in summer. Offer them to adults too, not just teenagers. People would love that, Marcus said. There's something special about learning from someone who really cares about passing on knowledge. After he left, Sheila stood in her workshop surrounded by tools and wood and projects in progress. This space had been her refuge for so long. Now it was something more, a place of creation, of teaching, of connection. She thought about the girl she had been, joining the military to find purpose. She thought about the officer she had become, dedicated and skilled, but carrying heavy responsibility. She thought about the broken woman who had fled to Northvale, looking for peace. And she thought about who she was now, all of those people combined into someone more complete, someone who could hold both pain and joy, failure and success, past and present. She was 68 years old. She had lived many lives, and she was finally, truly, herself. As autumn approached again, bringing the harvest festival and the cycle of seasons, Sheila found herself thinking about the future rather than the past. She planned to expand her workshop teaching program. She would continue her safety consulting work with the town, She was already thinking about a second book, this one focused on workplace safety for small businesses. Dr. Morrison had become an even closer friend. They had dinner together twice a week now, attended town events together, went on hiking trips in the surrounding hills. It still wasn't romantic. Neither of them wanted that. But it was a deep companionship that enriched both their lives. "We're like an old married couple," Emily had observed once with amusement, but without the marriage part. "We're companions," Sheila had replied. "That's enough." Tom and Emily's grandchild was born in November, a healthy baby girl named Claire. Sheila knitted a blanket for her and built a beautiful cradle that would become a family heirloom. "You're part of this family," Emily told her, holding baby Claire. "You know that, right? Not by blood, but by choice and time and love." "I know," Sheila said, touching the baby's tiny hand. "And you're my family too. All of you. This whole town." She meant it. Northvale wasn't just where she lived. It was home in the deepest sense. A place where she was known and valued, where she had purpose and connection, where she could be fully herself without pretense or protection. She still had nightmares occasionally. She still carried the weight of what had happened at Thornwood. But that weight no longer crushed her. It was just part of her story, not the entirety of it. She had learned that healing wasn't about forgetting or erasing pain. It was about integrating it, accepting it, and choosing to build something meaningful despite it. She had learned that you could fail and still be worthy, that you could make mistakes and still do good, that you could carry scars and still be whole. She had learned that it was never too late to accept all of yourself. The strong parts and the broken parts, the proud moments and the shameful ones, the person you were and the person you've become. Most importantly, she had learned that second chances were real, that you could build a new life without pretending the old one never happened, that you could find peace without achieving perfection. In December, the town held its annual review meeting where the mayor presented a report on the year's activities and accomplishments. Mayor Foster stood before the packed community center and spoke about various improvements and successes. When he got to the section on safety, he called Sheila up to the stage. "A year and a half ago," he said, "we faced a crisis that could have destroyed this town. Today, thanks to the work of Sheila Hunter, we're not only safe but prepared. We have comprehensive emergency plans. Our facilities meet or exceed safety standards. Our first responders are trained in hazardous material handling, and our citizens have access to education about keeping themselves and their families safe." He turned to Sheila. "Would you like to say anything?" Sheila looked out at the faces, friends and neighbors, students and colleagues, people she had known for 25 years, and people who were new to town. "I came to Northvale 25 years ago," she said, "because I needed a place where I could disappear, where I could be ordinary, where I could heal from something that had broken me." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "You gave me that. You accepted me without questions. You let me be just Sheila, the furniture lady. You gave me work and friendship and community. You gave me a second chance at life." She smiled. "When the chemical fire happened, I had a choice. I could stay hidden, stay safe, keep pretending I was just an ordinary person with no special knowledge or skills. Or I could step forward and be who I really was, someone with training and experience who could help." She looked around the room. "You helped me make that choice, not by pushing or demanding, but by showing me what community means, by demonstrating that we're all responsible for each other, that when crisis comes, we show up for each other, that our skills and knowledge aren't just for ourselves, they're meant to be shared." Her voice grew stronger. "I'm not special. I'm just someone who had specific training and was willing to use it when needed. Every one of you has skills and knowledge that could help others. Every one of you has the capacity to be a hero in your own way. All it takes is being willing to show up, to care, to act. She paused. So thank you for 25 years of giving me a home. Thank you for showing me that it's possible to heal and grow and become whole again. And thank you for reminding me that my past isn't something to run from. It's something to honor by using what I learned to help others. The applause was long and loud. People stood up. Some were crying. Tom and Emily hugged her. Dr. Morrison squeezed her hand. Marcus and his wife both embraced her. Even Mayor Foster looked emotional. Later, as people were leaving, young Emma Morris approached Sheila with her mother. "I want to be like you when I grow up," Emma said seriously. "Someone who knows things and helps people." Sheila knelt down to be at eye level with the teenager. "Then learn everything you can," she said. "Study hard, pay attention, ask questions, develop skills, and always remember that knowledge is meant to be used in service to others. That's what makes it valuable." "I will," Emma promised. Watching Emma walk away with her mother, Sheila felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The cycle continued. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Young people inspired to help and serve and care. This was her legacy. Not the military service she had left behind, not even the dramatic fire rescue, but the quiet, ongoing work of teaching and sharing and helping others become capable, thoughtful, caring people. Epilogue. 5 years later. 5 years passed. Sheila was 72 now, her hair completely silver, her movements a bit slower, her knees complaining more often. But her mind was sharp, and her hands were still steady when they needed to be. Her workshop had expanded. She now employed 3 full-time assistants and ran year-round programs for both teenagers and adults. The summer intensive was so popular that she had to limit enrollment. Her second book, Safety in Small Business, had been published and was widely used by companies trying to improve their safety practices. She was working on a third book focused on emergency preparedness for communities. Her safety consulting work had expanded too. Several neighboring towns had asked her to help them develop their own safety programs. She traveled 1 or 2 days a week, reviewing facilities, training emergency responders, teaching safety principles. She still restored furniture. That would always be her first love. But now it was balanced with teaching and consulting and writing. She used all of herself, all her skills, in ways that felt meaningful and right. Dr. Morrison had retired from active practice and now volunteered at a free clinic in the city 2 days a week. He and Sheila were still close friends, still hiking together, still having dinner twice a week. His grandchildren called her Aunt Sheila, even though there was no blood relation. Tom and Emily had 4 grandchildren now. Their daughter had moved back to Northvale, wanting to raise her children in the same community where she had grown up. Tom joked that he was getting too old for the early morning baking, but everyone knew he loved it. Marcus and his wife had 2 children. He had opened his own furniture shop in a nearby town, but still visited Sheila regularly for advice and to help with her teaching programs. Emma Morris had graduated high school and was studying engineering at university. She came back every summer to help with Sheila's workshop, acting as an assistant teacher for the younger students. The book about Sheila's life had been written by a journalist who had heard her story. Sheila had been reluctant at first, but she eventually agreed, thinking that maybe her story could help others who were struggling with trauma or guilt, or the challenge of building new lives. The book was called The Quiet Hero: One Woman's Journey from Tragedy to Service. It told the story of Captain Sheila Hunter, the Thornwood explosion, her years in Northvale, the chemical fire, and everything that came after. It wasn't a bestseller, but it found its audience. People who needed to hear that you could survive terrible things and still build meaningful lives. People who needed to know that it was never too late to integrate your past and use your experiences to help others. On a warm June evening, Sheila sat on the bench outside her workshop, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The town was quiet, peaceful, beautiful. Dr. Morrison came walking up the street and sat beside her. "Good day?" he asked. "Very good," Sheila said. "We finished a beautiful restoration, an old desk that's going to be perfect for Mrs. Rodriguez's granddaughter who's starting university in the fall. And I had a good session with my advanced students. Emma's really developing into an excellent teacher herself." "She learned from the best," Dr. Morrison said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the light fade. "Do you ever regret it?" Dr. Morrison asked eventually. "Leaving the military, I mean. Not going back." Sheila considered this. "I used to," she said. "For years I regretted it. I thought I had run away, that I had failed. But now I see it differently. I didn't run away. I transformed. I took what I learned and found new ways to use it. I served in one way for 18 years, and I've served in different ways for the 30 years since." She smiled. "Actually, I've probably helped more people in Northvale than I ever did in the military. Not as dramatically, maybe, but more consistently. Every student I teach, every family that reads my book and makes their home safer, every community that develops better emergency plans because of my consulting work, all of that adds up." "You found your calling," Dr. Morrison said. "It just wasn't what you originally thought it would be." "Exactly," Sheila said. A group of teenagers walked past, including two of her current students. They waved enthusiastically. "See you tomorrow, Miss Sheila." "See you tomorrow," she called back. "You know," Dr. Morrison said thoughtfully, "when I first met you, you were so careful, so private. You kept everyone at a distance. Now look at you. You're woven into this entire community. You're teaching the next generation. You're sharing your knowledge with the world. You've become exactly what you needed to become." "We both have," Sheila said, taking his hand. "We came here broken, and Northvale helped us heal. Now we give back. That's how it works." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Sheila thought about the long journey she had traveled. From eager young soldier to skilled officer, to trauma survivor, to furniture restorer, to teacher, to community guardian, to author, to consultant. It had been a winding path, full of pain and healing, failure and success, loss and discovery. But it had led her here, to this place, this community, this life where she could be fully herself, where her past and present were integrated, where her skills and knowledge served a purpose beyond her own survival. She was 72 years old. She had lived many lives. She had been broken and had put herself back together, stronger in the broken places. She was Sheila Hunter, not just the furniture restorer, not just the former military officer, not just the hero who had saved a town. She was all of those things and more. She was a whole person with a whole story, using every part of that story to help others, and that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear what inspired you the most. And where in the world are you watching from? Let us know below.